annual and in-kind sponsors, Luther Automobile Dealerships. Please give them a warm round of applause. Absolutely. As well as Stanley's Northeast Barroom. They're our bacon sponsor. The new, this amazing space we're in right now. Skelly Video Productions, Sterling Cross Group, Make It MSP, and Muddy Paws Cheesecake. Please give them a warm round of applause. We could not do what we do without their support, so we thank them very much. They help keep your tickets low, and they help us maintain what we do here. So if you or your company would like to be on this screen and get some love from us each breakfast, contact myself or anyone else on the team, and we can give you more information. We will be streaming shortly, if not right now, so check Twitter and Facebook for the link. Show of hands, who's here for the first time? Excellent. Welcome. I hope it's, oh, my little thing isn't working. There we go. Okay. Welcome. So I hope you come back. I hope it's not your only time. You can go to smbmsp.org and get information about our upcoming events. You can sign up for email updates and all kinds of good stuff. And we'd love to hear from you and find out what you think. Upcoming event before I yield the floor here. Next month, the 27th, in this space, conversations with Greg Swan. Greg is one of the smartest guys I know. He's Fallon's Director of Digital, Social, and Innovation. Always has a lot of fascinating things to say about the industry and the projects they're working on over there. So that should be a really good conversation, and we'll have registration open in the next week here or so you can check all of our social channels and website. We'll give you an update as to when that happens. So, without further ado, we're going to bring up George Fiddler from IFC Next. Take it away, George.
All right, check. Okay, all right. You got the clicker? Or? Good morning. As Michael mentioned, my name's George Fiddler. I'm from ICF Next, and that's actually the new name for what was previously Olson, Olson Engage. You might be familiar with us. We changed names earlier this year. Still same great people, culture, work, location just a few blocks away, but a new name now. And I'm a creative director at ICF Next within our PR social media division, but I'm also the lead of a practice that we have called Right Time Engagement, where we try to connect our clients' brands to relevant and appropriate trends within pop culture. So on that note, I'm going to be talking a little bit about right time engagement, specifically as it relates to sports. And I wanted to start the morning with this quote that I thought was really relevant today from Twitter founder and CEO Jack Dorsey, because tonight is game 1 of the NBA Finals, and I am pumped. For the game, yeah, sure, a little bit. I mean, I'll be tuning in. It'll be fun. But really, I'm here for the tweets. I'm here for the tweets. From hardcore fans, casual fans, non-fans, media, brands, that inevitably will take place tonight, and they will make their way into the Moments tab on Twitter, reaching people who might not have been watching the game even, might not even be sports fans, but through just being on social will know of something that happened in the game that has been memeified or something like that, and made applicable to their life. So on that note, I want to share an example of sort of that, what I just mentioned, from game 1 of the NBA Finals from last year. I believe 1 year ago exactly to the day-ish, maybe it was tomorrow. But so what was happening, game 1 in Oakland, LeBron's last season with the Cavaliers. It's tied at the end of regulation, and there's about 4 seconds left. The appropriate basketball play here, if you're J.R. Smith with the ball, is to pass it to LeBron or to turn around and try to make a basket because the score is tied. Yet what he did was dribbled opposite up the other end of the court, not passing the ball, not putting up a shot, because he later admitted he thought they were up 1 point. So it was a big mistake. in prime time, and quickly, this was the reaction to that play, right? So there's always the play, there's the reaction, and then if the reaction is widespread enough, there's the memification of that reaction to the play within the game, within the series, right? So here's LeBron saying, more or less, JR, we were tied, we were not up 1 point, why didn't you pass me the ball? You blew us game one, we lost the finals now, I'm leaving Cleveland, I'm going to Los Angeles. So that was the reaction, right? So then, as I mentioned, these reactions then usually turn into memes that, whether or not you're a fan, can be made applicable to things within your life and be funny, right? And so I chose, and there were hundreds, thousands maybe, of these examples, but I chose a few that were applicable to my life. So first, I have a dog, right? So instead of him yelling at JR about not passing him the ball, it's when you leave all the doors open, but your dog poops in the house anyways. All the doors were open. What are you doing, right? Second up, I have kids, hence the pirate patch bandage on my face. My toddler, his favorite T-shirt, dinosaurs, was not clean this morning and took a little scratch to the face. But also we were going up to on Memorial Day weekend up to the cabin. This example was very relevant. We just left a rest stop. Why didn't you go then? Right? Or, kind of fast here, sorry. Why do you keep insisting Frozen is better than Tangled? It objectively is not. You are a toy. You aren't the real Buzz Lightyear. And personally, my favorite, as it relates to the workplace setting, my favorite weekly, admittedly petty complaint, but I think legitimate nonetheless, this meeting could have been done in one email, right? So despite if you were watching the game or not, maybe you saw LeBron's reaction to JR for that blunder that he made. Chances are you saw those memes, right? That night, that morning, you might have been talking about it around the water cooler that morning. So I hope that those memes validated the statement that NBA Twitter is one of the most exciting, entertaining, and insightful parts of Twitter. And I couldn't agree with that statement more for sports in general, but basketball, NBA specifically. I mean, sure, slam dunks, three-pointers, home runs, touchdowns are cool and all, but the memes, the gifs, the end zone celebrations, the handshakes, the jokes, etc., that's what really get people commenting, engaging, sharing, thus reaching the non-sports fan, thus leading to this daily question that I'm super thrilled that I get to field every single day in my job. Did you see this trending? How can we tap into this? And so I can't recall exactly the client team situation as it pertained to the LeBron meme a year ago, but I assure you that came up. Did you see the LeBron thing last night? How can we tap into this? And I vaguely remember, is there any statement that we can make for a brand sort of standing up for JR, having some empathy, saying, everyone makes mistakes, don't sweat it, something like that, or is there any appropriate use of the meme that we can use for a brand? And ultimately, I said no. We said no for our clients in this situation, and usually we say no. I mean, 8, 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. Let's not tap into this. Let's not try to force our brand into the conversation. But the 1, 1.5, 2 times out of 10 that it does make sense, it more than makes up for the time spent debating the other 8. So I'm going to give just a couple of examples of how we have done that recently. So this was in NBA Twitter sphere. Last August, Manu Ginobili had played 23 years professionally, like 17 for the Spurs, and he had announced his retirement. So today, with a wide range of feelings, I'm announcing my retirement from basketball. So that led to a lot of, again, hardcore basketball fans talking about what a great player he was, all the championships he won with Tim Duncan, etc. But then when people started recollecting about some of his top plays, some people remembered a really interesting moment in 2009 when a bat flew into the arena in the San Antonio Stadium. and play had to be delayed. And you think, like, let's wait for the security to come out and resolve the situation. But no, Manu literally took the situation into his own hands and slapped the bat. I have a video in a minute. Probably not like the safest thing to do from like a rabies like standpoint. PETA was not happy about it. I think they tweeted about it. But people were sharing about this, recollecting about it. He punched a bat with his bare hands once. Happy retirement to the Bat Slayer himself, Manu Ginobili. Nice little Kingslayer, Jamie Lannister sort of comp there. Still the only man to kill a bat and save us from Dracula transforming on the court during an NBA game. Thank you, Manu. So then this conversation about bats starts happening. It's like, okay, I don't even like basketball, but that's pretty funny that thing actually happened. And this caught our attention because we happen to represent the largest bat pest control company in the country, in Terminix. And it also happened to be August, which happens to be the very best time of the year to prepare your house for preventative bat measures heading into the fall. So I happen to know far too much about seasonal residential bat removal patterns, but this was very relevant for our client. And so we get really excited, right? And then this moment is when I pull up sort of a Venn diagram, right? You have to fill in the middle. So on one side, you've got Manu Ginobili's retirement. You've got the internet talking about the time that he removed a bat from a game. On the right, you've got your client, who's the leader in bat removal and bat control services in the country and happens to be prime bat removal, bat preventative services season. How do you fill in the middle of that Venn diagram, right? And like I said, like 8, 9 times out of 10, you just can't, you know? And I've seen a lot of brands. I've actually, on behalf of several brands, admittedly, tried to force to fill in the middle of that Venn diagram and react to something, and it just, you know, it falls a little flat, right? But sometimes you find the right way to fill it in, and it really takes off. So this is what we decided to do. Jesus, clicker. We wrote this letter, right? So Terminix letterhead. Dear Manu, congrats on a great career and your announced retirement. We've thoroughly enjoyed watching you over the last 16 seasons. We're not sure what you have planned next, but we've been waiting 9 years to make the following second career suggestion. Join our Terminix branch here in San Antonio as a part-time field technician specializing in bat removal. We think you'd excel in exclusion services given your prior experience with flying pests like bats as demonstrated during your game against Sacramento in 2009. It was important for us to use like really kind of official sounding language within this. We'd certainly train you in on alternative methods of bat removal and provide protective gear to ensure safety is prioritized, but the calmness and timing you displayed in that moment aligns well with the skills we need to serve our customers all over San Antonio. To learn more about this job description, please feel free to contact me at talentacquisition@servicemaster.com. Attention, Russ Gerso. So once again, congratulations. So Russ is the regional director in San Antonio for Terminix, so we wrote this on his behalf. And I think this point also goes to show speed is more important than beautiful content in this situation. We could have, hey, let's get like a film crew out to the office in San Antonio and like interview Russ to like make this on camera, and we'll edit it and make it look really pretty and all that. But by the time that would have been done, the news cycle would have been gone. It would have been irrelevant. So what we did instead, call up client, hey, we have this idea. We're going to write a letter. We need your eyes on it, approval in like 15 minutes. And to normal clients, it's like, what are you talking about, 15 minutes? I can't approve anything. But having put in all the work prior to this moment, having prepped them for these situations that, hey, if we put that like red exclamation point in an email or text you, it means like we're onto something, like let's really prioritize it. So this letter, we just decided to tweet it out, attention at Manu Ginobili, or next act. And it quickly, like within minutes, so the retirement was, 8:30 that morning. So by 10:30, Yahoo Sports has posted about it. Bleacher Report, millions of followers, tons of retweets and likes, right? TNT posted it as well. And then from there, it just really sort of took off outside of social media, and we really work closely in tandem. And I mentioned I'm in the PR and social media sort of branch, so having those minds together, like what's the best way to use this on social, and how do we get this out with the media through PR, is really helpful. And so here's a video just that afternoon then the media ran with.
Joe just got taken.
What did he say?
He said it'll be okay.
Yeah, tell your wife to calm down.
Time
video
to
right here.
go viral. Manu Ginobili retired this week, bringing back this amazing video of him swatting the bat. Someone thinks he's got a new field he can get into. Check this out. Terminix offered Manu a job, saying, quote, join our Terminix branch here in San Antonio as a part-time field technician specializing in bat removal. We think you'd excel in exclusion services given your prior experience with flying pests like bats, as demonstrated during your game against Sacramento in 2009, as if we needed a reminder. So that got us
Smart
thinking.
job by Terminix.
That got us thinking, what would that look like?
Oh.
This is
So
what
this
that would look
Photoshop
like.
here is like one of my
Suddenly
favorite
became a
things I've ever
Terminator.
seen,
Manu
like
so
media do for us.
Yeah, he really
Got little love handles going on.
But he owns that truck.
So I remember when this happened, and I took a screenshot of it, and I texted it to my boss, and he thought that we had done the Photoshop, and he called me like, do not do that, we'll get in so much trouble. And I had to explain it was the media did it for us. So it was pretty cool, Chris Carter talking about it. So that was one example of where it ended up really quickly. So he announces it, we get the clients on the phone, we write the letter, we get the regional director in San Antonio on board with it. We send out the tweet. Quickly, social picks it up. It gets in that Moments tab that I mentioned. Media, from a broadcast standpoint, are covering it that afternoon. It's just pretty remarkable how quickly these things can take off, and it had zero money behind it whatsoever. So here were just a few results. We got 35 media stories, 336 million media impressions, an additional 14 million on Twitter, 8,000 social engagements, healthy lift in sentiment, and then it's always really fulfilling to hear from clients like this. So we got this email from the regional director. I personally have received several calls and text messages from friends, family, and coworkers all over the U.S. So things like that, it's just sort of a nice, I guess, cherry on top in addition to all of the other great stats. So next up, outside of NBA Twitter, but still in sports Twitter nonetheless. Last football season, we're at about 7-week point or something like that, and Patrick Mahomes is just lighting the league on fire. He plays for Kansas City, right? And so he's playing so well that ESPN, the magazine, decides to put him on the cover, do this really in-depth feature about his life. And there's this interesting excerpt from the story, about sort of how he's dealing with fame. The other day in Mahomes' apartment in Country Club Plaza neighborhood of Kansas City, his grandfather asked him, what's it like to be famous? For one thing, it means he eats less ketchup. He spent most of his life putting ketchup on everything. He would get bottles on it for his birthday. But now that everyone is watching every move he makes, he is sheepish about ordering ketchup. At a restaurant recently, his mom, Randy, recognized an unfilled desire as he dove into a steak. Just ask for it, Randy said. I know you want it. Patrick wouldn't. So she asked for the ketchup and slipped it to him. So the man loves ketchup, but he's so famous that he's embarrassed about his love for ketchup. And sure enough, we have Heinz ketchup as our clients. So I wish I'd add like an air horn or something to that. It's just it was perfect, right? So sometimes with the previous example, it was a case of monitoring not for your brand name, not even for your category's name, but bats. So there's Terminix, there's pest control, and there's bats. Two sort of steps removed from the key thing that you're monitoring for day in, day out. This was an example in our TweetDeck columns that have, 50 different columns open. Sure, we're listening for Heinz and our competitors, but we're also tracking ketchup. It's blowing up the internet talking about ketchup. So we made a little recap video. I couldn't decide if I should play it at the end after I talked about it or just played it up front. We actually made it and submitted it to the Sports Clio Awards. And the tweet that we sent out about this won the best single social media post of the year at the Clio. So I'm just going to play the video.
Patrick Mahomes is now a polarizing figure.
Patrick Mahomes is creating buzz for what's being called his fatal flaw. He likes ketchup on his steak.
If you use ketchup for anything other than fries, I feel like you're a psychopath.
I'm a big ketchup fan. I've always been. I don't think it's that weird.
So Heinz Ketchup said, hey, you know what? You can have free ketchup for life if you throw 57 touchdowns this season. Heinz 57. Get it? Right now he has 31 through 10 games. It's possible. The NFL record is 55.
Heinz Ketchup, they were like, if you give us 57 touchdowns,
We'll give you the lifetime
Supply
of ketchup.
Favorite part.
Patrick Mahomes for MVP, baby! Oh, no!
Heinz is benefiting from Patrick Mahomes in the grocery aisle. That tweet was posted just days ago, and its value has already reached $4.5 million.
It is crazy how social media blows things up these days.
Okay, so that was sort of the whole story, but I can walk us through it quickly. So that ESPN profile hit in the morning, and it was like an hour later, again, like 10 o'clock, Yahoo's onto that part about ketchup. We found his one flaw. He likes ketchup on his steak. And of course, because the internet's so supportive and nice about these things, they just couldn't help but say how much they agreed with them. No, it's the complete opposite. It's NFL is currently being dominated by a 10-year-old. He eats steak on his ketchup and therefore should be benched for the remainder of the season. Boom, roasted, right? Like, why hasn't the NFL suspended Mahomes yet? This one's is in serious need of mental help. So yeah, the internet can be a sort of a mean place sometimes for innocent little things like this. But of course, we are supportive of ketchup fans. And again, here, before I talk about this too much, it's the Venn diagram, right? So Patrick Mahomes, likely MVP of the NFL, loves ketchup, right? We are the biggest ketchup brand in the world. What's the proper way to fill in that Venn diagram, right? We could send him some ketchup, but by the time he receives it, the news cycle might be over, right? We could just kind of send him a tweet saying, hey, don't listen to the haters, eat ketchup if you like it, who cares? It's not really that interesting or that going to get people talking. But what's something unique to your brand that Hunt's or no other competitors can do? The number 57. So if you're familiar with Heinz, 57 varieties. It's actually a fun fact, the variety was actually 57 varieties of pickles way back when, but now people just kind of think it's of ketchup, don't know what it means, but still know Heinz 57 nonetheless. And it just so happened that at the time, Mahomes had 31 touchdowns, which put him within striking distance of Peyton Manning's record of 55 touchdowns. 57, just a couple more. So the offer, hey, if you hit 57, we'll give you free ketchup for life, felt like an ownable play. So we just quote retweeted the Yahoo story. Quickly led to quite a bit of media pickup from all the main outlets. He talked about it in his press conference that afternoon, saying that if he hit 57, he would give all the ketchup to his linemen, which was a nice gesture and pretty cool to see live on ESPN. And this was kind of a way that we just continue to sort of amplify it throughout the season, sort of doing a countdown. You'll see never really mentioning him. We did not strike an endorsement deal with him. He actually later signed with a much inferior ketchup brand in Hunt's, but that's a different story. But these were just some ways to sort of keep the conversation going about the potential record. Here are ways that fans, come from behinds. Brady goes up 3 less a minute left. Mahomes, hold my ketchup. Monday Night Football had a little ketchup graphic. Believe in something, even if it means putting ketchup on everything. So people, maybe that one was kind of inappropriate to co-opt, but it was, nonetheless, it was really funny seeing all these. And so I mentioned the quote from the regional director in the last example was super kind of surprising and fulfilling. to see, as were the awesome results from that previous one. But when this tweet came through from Darren Ravel, a couple million followers himself, saying that the single tweet that had zero paid dollars behind it, zero money went in, like out-of-pocket dollars went into it, was worth $4.5 million. That was pretty amazing, and it all happened in the matter of a day or two. So those were a couple recent sports-specific examples. We definitely have tons of others within our right time engagement practice as it relates to other things in pop culture. But I want to share a few key takeaways. So number one, bats, right? So for Terminix, bats, mosquitoes, termites, various different kinds of birds, possums. I mean, we're monitoring everything that they could and might be able to prevent in people's homes and businesses, because you never know when there might be an interesting conversation. Don't just monitor for your brand and the category and your competitors. Get really creative. Even if it's been a month since you've seen anything interesting in your tweet deck about those secondary sort of monitoring terms, one day something interesting is going to happen. Second, this is pretty obvious, move fast. Obviously, and know when you're too late. I've been, in the situations where we've had clients drag their feet a little bit, and by the time that we may be sent it for approval too late, and by the time we went live, we had missed the news cycle. So know when to pull the plug and when the news cycle might be over. Don't worry about making beautiful content. I think both, like that tweet it had nothing. It was just copy as a quote retweet. And maybe if we had made a video or a graphic, would have it really added to the results? I don't think so. It's really about just the gesture and the timeliness. The Venn diagram again, right? If you can't fill it in, move on, right? And pressure test it with people, is this really an ownable, authentic, interesting, shareable way? Or is it just, are we forcing ourselves into this conversation? Really think hard about the middle of that Venn diagram. And think about the reaction through a PR lens, right? So with Mahomes, I think a standard community management response would have been more or less, hey, don't listen to the haters. If you want to put ketchup on your steak, you go right ahead. Just sort of a nice show of support through community management. Look at if people in media, in PR, are writing about this subject, covering the subject. What are they saying, and how can what you post be related to them and be of interest to media? And lastly, try to add some conversation value to the story. So what I mean by that is, so can he get to 57 touchdowns? That's this interesting discussion and debate that fans, people on Twitter, media could have the day that we posted that tweet, but then for the remainder of the season. And we saw that happen. He threw 6 touchdowns 2 weeks later, and ESPN, they're talking about, wow, he's that much closer to the Ketchup for Life offer. So think of ways that you can extend the conversation and not just have it be a one-time flash in the pan. And that is all I've got. And just a quick plug about ICF Next, a couple blocks away, previously Olson. We are hiring right now. We have a number of job openings listed, and we're going to be looking to grow our social team this summer. So please feel free to reach out through the website or me directly on LinkedIn or wherever. Thank you.
Thanks, George. We have a couple minutes for questions, if anyone has questions for George. Okay, hold on one second.
Hey, I was curious how you keep an eye on trends. Do you use any sort of tools, monitoring tools, besides you had just mentioned looking at mentions? Do you follow any trends, or how do you evaluate this stuff?
So TweetDeck and Reddit exclusively. So I mentioned TweetDeck. There are some days when me and my team have 75 literally columns within TweetDeck for every single possibly potentially relevant search term as it relates to our clients. That's the number one way. And sometimes within TweetDeck, if for example, we have beer clients or coffee clients, terms that are just going to come in constantly, filter it out right by engagement. So it's I only want to see coffee or beer tweets if it's gotten 50 retweets on it to know that it's starting to get some traction. And then on Reddit, there are thousands of subreddits. There's ketchup lovers subreddits. So find the Reddits that are applicable to your brands, and that's really where these conversations sometimes take place before they even make it to Twitter, before they make it surely to big media platforms like ESPN.
Other questions? All right.
Curious how you got the monetary value on that tweet. Was it just from the media publishers that it was on and their reach and their monetary value, or how was that calculated?
The $4.5 million?
Yeah.
I have no idea. So Darren Ravel, previously from ESPN, now at the Action Network, he tweeted it out for us. Without that, we usually don't attach ad value to impressions within our reporting. But hell, I mean, if a media, like a reporter is going to tweet it out for us, we're not going to, not put it in our recap deck. So I'm, to be honest, I'm not sure exactly. Probably the traditional ad value equations, X number of impressions would have cost X dollars from an advertising standpoint. That's what I presume he did.
More?
And what's your policy on tweeting another brand or talking about another brand versus talking to, say, a celebrity? And is there any sort of legal that you worry about when you're engaging these conversations?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, legal is always a discussion, and we engage with them in these manners. And it's always like, are we in any way implying endorsement, right? And that's just what we have to avoid. Right, and we made it pretty clear, I think, in both examples here with Manu and Patrick, that they were not a partner. We're not implying that they are endorsing the product. We're merely responding to a conversation that's taking place and saying something about our brand. But certainly there's a risk-reward sort of analysis that you have to consider, right? In both of these cases, sure, there was a 5-10% chance that possibly one of them, their representatives, could have reached out, hey, you are not a paid endorser, or he's not a paid endorser for you. But we felt just that the gesture was kind of funny and kind and relevant enough that we were willing to take the risk for the reward.
Do we have one over here? No? Okay. Thank you very much, George.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So next up, we have Joseph Lindberg from Land O'Lakes. Get his deck here. It's coming. There you go. You got the clicker?
Awesome. I do.
All right.
Hello. My name is Joseph Lindberg. I'm the digital communications editor for Land O'Lakes. I've been there actually 3 years to the day, I realized, before I came up here, which is pretty cool. I do have the name of my presentation is obviously on the invite today. I like this one a lot more because it kind of explains really what we were after and what challenge was kind of thrown our way. So real quick about me, digital communications editor is as open-ended and vague as you think it is. I touch all things digital for the Land O'Lakes Inc. brand, which for people who aren't really super familiar with Land O'Lakes, we are actually a farmer-owned co-op, and the dairy business is actually the smallest part of our portfolio. We basically touch, the phrase we like to use is farmer to fork, everything from the seed and the inputs you put in the ground all the way to the food you eat, all the way through the value chain. So really dynamic, really fascinating business. What I'm going to talk about today was our activation at South by Southwest and what it took to basically build a digital dashboard that could explain what the heck was going on and help us understand if we were achieving what we set out to achieve. And it's important to note, this was the second year we went to South by Southwest, this huge opportunity to tell this really unique story that I was just speaking to. And it was right out of the gate, the expectations were already sky high because we had gone in 2018 and kind of blown the doors off the place. Like the amount of earned media we achieved was just astonishing, and people were just really surprised. I think we had a little novelty to it a little bit the first year around. Second year around, everyone kind of knew we were coming, and certainly we knew that it was going to be a success on some level, but you have to ask yourself, what how do you top 2018, and how do you get your head around this huge activation, all the digital success that you want to have, everything from social to owned platforms, all the content, everything in between. And I think for us, it was very important. Another piece of context here as we kind of set up the situation. It's important to understand that there wasn't a single thing we wanted to achieve. There were about 36 things we wanted to achieve, kind of in that digital space. And I think that both kind of put us in a little bit of a straitjacket, and it also empowered us to think differently about how we were going to measure this activation. How are we going to build a dashboard that basically explains to internal and external stakeholders that this was a wild success. Making the situation even a little bit more dicey, February 15th was the day that a huge pile of KPIs that I'll show here in a second was kind of delivered to our core digital team that I was on. March 8th is when the doors to South by Southwest opened. So we had less than a month to build out a really comprehensive, cohesive dashboard that was going to tell the story that we kind of wanted it to. And that was everything from perception change to the engagement in the room on an organic level, on a digital level, all the way through the activation beyond South by Southwest. And, this is the story around dashboards is so, it's fraught. I think everyone in this room has had a horrible experience building a dashboard or talking about a dashboard, pulling all of these platforms together, understanding what's going on, tying it back to the overall goal of the activation. What I think, when you look at all of these metrics make a lot of sense as single line items, but how they fit into a larger narrative, how they fit into a bigger picture, I think is a little bit the tricky part. And the thing is, this represents the needs and wants of the entire organization, right? It was a huge expenditure. It was a huge risk, even though, the people close to it knew, like, this is South by Southwest. Like, we've done this, we can do it again. So if you think about the challenge that we had going into this, we've got a really compressed timeline. We have, some really good high-level goals and a pile of KPIs and not a ton in between. And so when we dove into actually kind of attacking the problem, we learned very, very quickly. And I think on this approach on this approach premise, I'm just going to walk through kind of the big things that we learned and the big things that were really, really valuable to us. Right out of the gate, super cliche, that's cool. But the reality is that we found out that, if we didn't have the right people in the room, it wasn't about a skill set, right? You're not looking for someone who, hey, like, they are an Adobe expert, therefore they are going to be integral to this, to building out this dashboard and building this narrative. What you needed was someone who wasn't terrified at the thought of doing this in 3 weeks for a Fortune 200 company that was spending millions of dollars on an activation. You needed folks who were really excited to dive in and do something new and different and kind of leave all of the old ways of doing things behind, because it was a huge opportunity. And I was lucky enough that our leadership, Lauren Hogus, actually, one of the digital directors on the Land O'Lakes side, she basically said, yep, go raid the analyst pen and get the resources you need. The core South by Southwest strategy group basically said, take this, run with it, own it, which is both terrifying and super empowering. So already the culture and the people involved were very, very, it was going to work in our favor. The other thing that became clear, and if it's not clear already, this was moving really, really fast. And I'm not going to suggest that I was out there creating chaos to, climb, through the company or something. But if chaos is there, if it's really, really messy, if it's really unorganized, it's a huge opportunity to just start doing things differently. Not because you can. It's not really going to do things differently because it's a little bit messy, but it was a huge opportunity to kind of throw out the playbook and approach it from a completely new kind of point of view. And it was really empowering because it let us actually dive into we were asking questions that we normally wouldn't have asked, because normally when in a more traditional corporate setting, I think if you had this goal, if we had this objective with a 6-month timeline, we would have, we would have gone line by line what the dashboard would have looked like. We would have piecemealed off everything and said, all right, everyone, complete your little work stream, and then at the end of the day, we'll have this basically Frankenstein dashboard. Instead, we just got really, really fast and managed to find a way to fail really, really fast to get to kind of the product floor, so to speak, and find out the simplest things that we're going to need to make the bigger picture possible. It actually made things a lot cleaner, and we were empowered to say no. I think that was a huge part. I had way more, I had a lot uglier whiteboard shots, which I just love. You go back like 6 months or whatever, and you look at all these terrible whiteboarding sessions you had. These were kind of the best ones, or the most kind of discernible. The idea here, though, is it kind of connects to that previous point, is that we wanted to fail really, really quickly, wanted to iterate, we wanted to build on really, really simple concepts and work towards something a little bit bigger. The other cool thing that you're empowered to do when that happens is keep really, really close who you're actually building that dashboard for. So in this particular case, it turns out that it was being built for me, because I was going to be in the room down there monitoring digital performance, monitoring all of our social channels, publishing content, really trying to optimize in real time, in addition to conveying our success to all these different stakeholders in the room and beyond. We centered ourselves on building this tool, building this dashboard for the people who would actually use it, not the people who are going to look at it once and never, go back again, not the people who are going to get an email, take a peek, pretend they know what they're looking at, and then never return, right? We're going to build this thing for the people who are going to need to use it, which is, again, we go through, I was going through this, and all this stuff seems so simple, but when you actually piece together the big picture, it's actually pretty fascinating. Scalable needs, what this really kind of speaks to is the fact that we needed a dashboard. I think I've kind of spoken to it a little bit, that we could build up, replicate, find the holes really, really quickly. Basically this ties together all the previous couple points. What we learned, though, I think, through this whole really, really messy process, starting over once or twice, this dashboard needed to do two things. I needed to be able to, as the CEO or the CMO walks by, yell at them a really big vanity number, like impressions or reach, and then they would go, awesome, and then keep walking. And I needed to do that by hitting the refresh button, not by, like I did in 2018, manually putting all of this stuff together natively in the platforms, right? That's terrifying. The second piece, also scalable, is that, obviously we're going to do a ton of A/B testing. We're going to put a lot of content to work. We're going to find out what micro messaging works, but we needed to know what macro messaging was going to work. We divided this campaign basically into 3 content storylines, so to speak. There's one around technology and nanotechnology. There was one around health, and there was another around food security. And what this dashboard was able to deliver eventually was the ability to see what macro content and themes we're actually delivering, and so I could optimize spend in real time, which is kind of is incredible. So basically what you've got is, the right people in the room talking about the actual end needs of the users, talking about the bigger picture, iterating really, really fast. It's agile, right? I mean, sure, it's a corporate-y word, but there's an enormous amount of truth from it. I come from newspapers. I mean, my Land O'Lakes experience was my first corporate experience, or basically outside of a newsroom. So I'm still struggling with a lot of the parlance, even 3 years in. But, agile and opportunities, it's all over the place. I think, boy, that is a finicky clicker. Okay. Whew. a couple screenshots here of how the actual dashboard came together. And you'll see this is kind of that vanity level filter that was able to help me deliver, in real time by hitting just a refresh button, those really big numbers that that leadership wanted to hear, a way to benchmark against 2018, which we actually had. We had actually surpassed what we achieved in 2018 before the doors opened, which was really, really cool because we were able to optimize not only by those larger story themes I was talking about, but also by pre-activation, the 3 days that we were activating, all of the pieces afterwards, paid, organic, there's a ton of segmentation, right? But for me, the cooler part was the deeper content level performance, right? So what this was able to provide for us basically in the room in South by Southwest was to see in real time what content, like I mentioned, what pieces of content along certain themes were performing really well, and I was shifting spend in real time, and the ability to have really concrete data that you trust because of the process that you went through, and being able to, again, I think about we've had large activations in the past. There was obviously South by Southwest in 18, but there was Land O'Lakes Farm Bowl before that in 2018, where the idea of pulling all of your spend out of a particular channel for a particular day or a particular part of the activation to sync it someplace that wasn't part of the original plan would send shockwaves through like a digital team, especially one that was a little bit more traditional in the way they approach things. Not necessarily in a bad way, but just in we had a plan, let's stick to it. We were able to implode the plan in a matter of hours and then repeat the process every single day. And it's exciting just thinking about it and what that was able to do for our content, generally speaking. Wanted to throw this out there because I haven't spoken really specifically about the tools and the platforms and all that, but this gives you an idea of how many data streams were actually in this dashboard. The really, really important part here is that I talked about kind of that dashboard floor. What we had a few days before and even the day of South by Southwest was maybe, a third of this, right? But every single day that went by, we were folding in more channels, we're folding in more platforms, and really bringing that dashboard to life. The tool we used to bring all that to life and the one that the analyst did just an incredible job building out is called Datorama, and that's what those screenshots you saw previously were from. Incredibly customizable, really, really clever tool. And I think where that kind of leaves me is the idea that going through that entire process with all the right people, seeing that dashboard work, on the ground in real time. When I take one big step back, I think that the actual KPI, the actual measure of success for South by Southwest this year from a digital perspective, because of how quickly we achieved all the big kind of, achievements that we wanted to hit on the digital side, was the dashboard itself. The idea that we could build a dashboard in that amount of time that served that many interests and it allowed us to deliver on all this strategy and this really big, messy picture, I think that was the actual deliverable for the digital folks for this activation. And it's a really, really cool thing to see come to life because now, basically a month after South by Southwest, we did Land O'Lakes Bot Shot in conjunction with the Final Four. And if you saw anything related to that, really, really cool, really, really novel activation. We scaled the exact same dashboard in the exact same process. And we're going to do that again and again and again and again. And it's bringing the organization closer together. All of a sudden, I'm in the communication side, right? But I'm now working just as closely with some of the analysts and some of the pure marketers in our IMC group as I am with people on the communications team. And anytime a simple, air quote, tool like this can bring an organization closer together and prove out something really, really cool, I think the value there is just enormous. So I have one video actually to end on, and it gives you a flavor for what South by Southwest actually was like this year. And you can kind of see what we were able to bring to life, largely because of the dashboard and the digital discipline that we brought to life. Maybe. And that's it.
Questions? Raise them high. All right, I'm on my way.
As someone who's kind of like ignorant from the developer side, can you talk a little bit about how you were able to sync this dashboard to like Ads Manager API and how that worked kind of on the back end?
So this story is, I'm up here telling it. The analysts that were on this project, they're just as big a part. I do know that Datorama, the platform we were using, because I wasn't involved as narrowly in terms of connecting these platforms, but I can say and to the point about the title of this talk, it's not about the tool until it is. That question is, when it is, it's really, really important. And Datorama is a little bit more open-ended. The APIs are a little bit more friendly, so to speak, where, especially with with certain ad managers, and I believe with Google as well, it's a little bit plug and play. And you're going to have to still go deeper and make sure that the data is apples to apples compared to everything else. There's a lot of contingencies around how quickly the data actually updates. Like, we still had to go deep, even though these platforms just kind of plugged in. But our analysts did incredible work, and it's really incredible the amount of stuff we learned about the platform itself that we probably never would have learned unless we actually did this. So now we can go back to Datorama and be like, hey, we noticed X, Y, and Z. How can you help us out? So I think there's also value on, for someone like me, seeing how these platforms actually plug in and actually going deeper, because sure, I don't necessarily need for my, my day-to-day, I don't need to know how the technicalities of how Datorama actually plugs into all these platforms until it becomes the dashboard won't work unless, certain things change. So hopefully that kind of answers that question.
Hi, I had two just clarifying questions about the dashboards that you showed. Mm-hmm. In the first one, there was a corresponding spike. Yep. I was curious what that is. And then the second is on the second dashboard, there was none as an option underneath one of them. Really,
I knew there was going to be some folks in the room that caught the stuff that I see. So the first one is pretty, that's the 3 days we were down there. So the dashboard actually captures the 2 weeks that we were, hitting these really, really tight specific audiences around awareness, around attendance, around taking action on the messaging. That huge spike is the 3 days we're in Austin. That's when our spend ramped up really, really dramatically. It's where a lot of our kind of organic engagement came from as well, which gives a solid boost to kind of the bottom line kind of vanity figures. The none that you saw, so every piece of content actually was published through Percolate, which is our enterprise content management system, social publishing platform, which actually speaks to Datarama, Allocadia, which is where all of our spending is tracked. It runs through Percolate because it gives a really, this is really good stuff, right? It gives a really specific campaign code or like a tracking number. The none that you saw there, for reasons that still beguile me, somewhere there are pieces of content that perform pretty well that don't have a tracking number on them, and I've been trying to find them for like a month and I can't, and it's really, really frustrating. So that's the none. Luckily, it's a pretty small number, but it speaks to the complexity, really, at the end of the day, and how important it is to have a really, really, really flexible approach and be willing to just fall flat on your face repeatedly when stuff doesn't look right. And because, you know, without that, I think that a lot of that data would be a lot messier, because at the end of the day, we're talking about, I mean, at the end, you know, I showed the data stream slide before, but even beyond that, there were, you know, half a dozen enterprise platforms that were also plugging data into this. So enormously complex, but yeah, that's where the none came from.
Other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh, no. You have no audio. Okay, you're good. All right, so we're going to end up here with Casey Hall from Lumberjack Social. Your mic's on the table there, and here's your remote. Let's see. You have it switched over, right? Yeah. There we go. It's getting there. There you go. All right.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for sticking around for all three presentations. I'm Casey Hall. I run Lumberjack Social. I'm an independent consultant working with primarily large B2B businesses. Lately, that's been large B2B software businesses, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So some of my clients have been Siemens, Secure Envoy. Used to work for Thomson Reuters for about 10 years in-house. So these brands, for better or worse, aren't necessarily as exciting as some of the brands we've looked at already today, which seems like they were a lot of fun to work with. B2B software is often a place where the brands themselves don't engender a lot of emotion or necessarily trust from people. So it's a place where we're really trying to humanize brands. So I go into companies oftentimes to build employee advocacy programs or help them activate their executives. Try to humanize the brand, demonstrate the expertise that's behind this B2B enterprise software at these different companies, and give people a reason to pay attention to what they're doing. So executive activation, process of bringing executives in, usually that involves some training, either managing their accounts for them or showing them how to manage their own accounts. But what I think is really useful is when you can bring that executive activation into the rest of the social media and overall digital program. What I've seen a lot of times, and Joseph kind of mentioned the comms and marketing split, is that you have leaders who work with communications teams all the time to do an interview or whatever else the communications team might do. A little higher, okay. But not often working directly with the marketing team. So that's one of the big areas where you have marketing controls most of the levers for social media, oftentimes in terms of paid social media, employee advocacy programs, or just the whole reach of social media. And the communications team is often separated from that. So a couple of examples here I'm going to share with you. One was an executive who I had worked with to set his LinkedIn profile up, and he'd started doing some things. And he'd gotten a slot at an industry event at a conference. So he's about to go on stage, and we talked about the possibility of using Twitter during a conference because it was a great time to use it. He hadn't ever used Twitter, so half an hour before he went up on stage, I had the communications person who was there. He's like, all right, let's do this. Quickly set up a Twitter account, had him tweet out a few things, and then he walked up on the stage and started talking about it. So we had the tweet set up, we knew what they were going to be, but he had 0 followers, right, when he walked up on the stage, which is one of the challenges oftentimes with executive social activation is they like to see things happen kind of right away. And if they don't have any followers, it can be really frustrating for everyone how long it takes to sort of build that up, right? And nobody likes to have that, oh, you got 3 likes on your article that we spent 2 weeks approving and putting together. So that's kind of where we started. Fortunately, I was in close contact with our marketing teams and was able to send that into our employee advocacy program, where we had already several thousand employees in this company who were actively kind of getting ready to share things out. And what I did is not just kind of spread it out, shotgun style, but actually looked at what conference he was at, who the audience was, what kind of engineers and software people might be there, and who were talking about those things, and then looked into our employee advocacy program, because we had about, I think, 70 different kind of content streams in groups, often overlapping, so we were able to target really well those people who already were connected to those people. So those employees got a hold of this, and they really liked the idea that they could retweet one of their executives who they work under. And so we had a really high adoption rate. It went out, and because we had chosen the people who already had those networks, we saw really nice results. Back one. Ooh, where is it? So we had, this was about 7 times more popular on our employee advocacy program than anything else that we shared. And I think that was for a couple of reasons. One was because we had identified those employees who already had those networks. This was great content for them. And I don't know, how many people here work with an employee advocacy program? Some. Okay. Well, one of the problems that we often have with employee advocacy programs, or people often have, is that the content can get a little stale. I mean, you keep on putting marketing content in there, marketing content, maybe a little bit of, good work in the community content. That's all great. But when you have executives either writing articles or tweeting things out themselves, I mean, everybody wants to share an article from like the CFO. Those are really nice ways to kind of bring in content that's not branded content, but still is serving the same purpose. So the other reason it worked was in the moment. He was on the stage while it was happening, so that we got all the kind of lift from everything that was happening on the hashtag of the conference. It was from a person that they knew, so like I said, employees are really happy to share tweets from the CFO generally. And it was topically aligned, so it was on point for these people's audience. The other thing is we had all these things in place first. So when you try to start an executive activation and don't have either the branded channel or kind of a program to connect the executives to the branded channels and employees, it becomes a really, really uphill battle. So getting those things set up, and also having an executive who's willing and interested, and one who had a spot to speak at a conference, there was a lot of kind of work that went into making all those things happen. But once they're all in place, it becomes a really nice, I've heard this sort of marketing as a flywheel, not a funnel kind of thing lately, and it really just starts to work for you on its own. All right. I tried to do a cool animation there. Let's see if it works. It's kind of cool. Not as cool as I'd hoped, but I make things exciting as I can. So another time where we had a lot of success with actually 3 different executives was for a product launch. So this was a product launch, again, another global software company, and it was moving into a new space, doing some new things with AI that they hadn't done before. Now that's something that had always been sort of in their wheelhouse, but never really front and center. And we thought that if we just started using the branded channels right away and started talking deeply about AI and all the things that we do, it would kind of dilute the big launch that we were going for, because those branded, the analysts and bloggers and other people would have realized that we were talking about AI for a reason, and it would have drawn some attention away from the launch itself. So what we did instead was found 3 executives who really knew these things well, who had an engineering background, who could talk about AI, who'd been working on it for a long time, and we used them to lay the groundwork. So we had articles written by the 3 of them that we published on LinkedIn and other places, external places, had them start liking and sharing, gave them the support that they needed to really highlight the fact that we had expertise in this area, so that when the product came out, they were, media knew who to talk to. We had a little bit of kind of runway leading up to it without sort of losing the event. And then we continued to use these executives throughout that launch and throughout the product cycle, as are people who were, we put in videos for social media, but laying that groundwork first meant that when media came to talk to them, we already had a nice sort of library of content from them on this topic, and it wasn't all just coming out in a press release the day of our launch. Yep, so we had really high quality engagements. Because of the nature of this, the software that we were doing, we weren't necessarily looking to convince everyone in the world that we were good at doing AI and this new product was going to be valuable, but there was this really small niche of really intelligent people on this topic who did not get that message, and that was the audience that we were going for. And we found executive activation to be a better way than trying to kind of blunt force with the brand and tell them how smart we were about AI. So, how do you do it? Has anyone here done a lot of executive activation or worked with that a lot? A couple people. One of the things that I've found is it can be really challenging if the executive has zero interest, and you try to you end up managing the whole thing, and they don't even really like it that much, and they're not convinced it's of any value. And that's something that you have to do sometimes, but ideally what you can do is find an executive who is willing to do it. A lot of times that will be, maybe not the CIO, but maybe a VP somewhere who is more interested in looking for, not to be Machiavellian, but looking for a way to kind of distinguish themselves and move themselves up. So find someone who's interested, develop a convincing point of view that communicates why this is worth their time, and show that to them, talk to them, and then give them a lot of support initially, and as long as you need to, rather than trying to get 15 of your subject matter experts or executives all up and running at once. Find a small group of 2 or 3 or even 1, and make that person a star both internally and externally, and that's what's going to draw other executives and other people to want to do it. That'll be more convincing than all the decks and PDFs you can send them telling them about why they need to be social. Talked a little bit about the collaboration between marketing and communications. I think this is the reason why this doesn't happen more often, is because communications controls, for the most part, all the things that happen with the executives and the way that they interact with media and social media, where marketing has all the levers to actually amplify those things. So it's like you have the fuel here and the ignition here, and you just need to bring all those things together. And I would say it's really important to have an internal communications plan to talk about it, because once these executives start going out there and you can demonstrate that this is effective, that's how you're going to grow your program. Common obstacles, so disinterested executives. Worry less about whether they're in the C-suite or not, and whether or not more about whether they're going to be interested in doing it. Success for one executive quickly engenders interest from others, and that will be the best recruiting tool. Silos for marketing communications. If you can show marketing and communications how they can support each other. One of the challenges that we've had whenever I've worked with companies putting together an employee advocacy program is that problem of not having enough content and not having enough interesting content, or not having enough not pure marketing content. And throughout the whole social thing, not just employee advocacy, but if the communications team is able to build that content for marketing via executives that they can use across social media, whether it's videos, other things, it really can work nicely for both groups and raise all ships. Outcomes. So, as I mentioned, that one case we saw about a 7 times increase in the number of shares that we got through the executives than we did for the branded posts themselves. It varies a little bit depending on how exciting your executive is, but it's something that you can build, and I've seen much greater reach, much greater engagement from those kinds of posts than we're getting from brand posts anymore. There's some really exciting brands out there, but for a lot of the brands that I've been working with, it's the people behind the brands who are going to get that reach and engagement. Some of the less quantifiable things, if you have an executive who is out leading the charge, being active in social, it's going to help your channel managers, and it's going to help your employees who are interested in being social, whether that's social selling or employee advocacy. I like doing these programs sometimes in a little bit of a guerrilla basis, going out, finding the group of employees, bringing them up, and then making the pitch as to why we need to do all these things after you have a proof of concept. But if you get executives in there, and they're kind of part of the team rather than just someone who is passively receiving the performance reports, it's going to help your whole social media program. It's going to give you more budget and just more interest from leadership. That's it for me. I am, end of the thing. So Lumberjack Social, that's me. I love working with all kinds of companies. Like I said, it's mostly B2B technology companies, but take all comers.
Thank you. Questions for Casey? All right. A couple in the back there. On my way.
So you talked about employee advocacy, and that's something that my company is going to start doing because I work at a law firm, so I have a bunch of different attorneys. So
a specific tool for that, or what tools have you used that have been successful, specifically looking at like 250 potential actually active attorneys?
Yeah, so I'm a recovering attorney myself. So good luck. And
thank you.
They can't tell attorneys anything, unfortunately. I would recommend if you are just starting, maybe you've already done this, but try doing it manually with emails and spreadsheets.
That's what I do right now.
Yeah, but I think that's really important because what I've seen, there's good tools out there, but they oftentimes the salespeople will come in and you have no idea exactly what you need, so it sounds like you've already kind of done that. So I think doing it by hand, even if it's a small scale first. The tool that I've used when I was at Thomson Reuters and we did a large RFP process was the Land. And we chose that because it was fairly simple and fairly inexpensive, relatively inexpensive. So we were able to have a few hundred people join the program. If they didn't all necessarily use it, we didn't feel terrible about it. Something like LinkedIn Elevate is really great, but it's really the cost per seat is more expensive. Everyone's Social is another popular one that I've used and had success with. But I like Land for the simplicity. Especially for people who aren't otherwise involved in social, not in Sprinkler, it's right faster than
I work at a nonprofit. I'm back here. So our CEO is out there kind of at events and things, but otherwise she's pretty busy. So we're kind of understaffed. And so what I'm envisioning is maybe kind of trying to approach her about this and maybe doing kind of 50-50 where she does some and our team does some. Is that something you've seen before?
Yeah, totally. I think I've seen everything in the spectrum from it being totally handled by the team and by support people. But I think having some sort of mix is actually great. So whether that's for content creation, if you can have a short interview with the CEO, get a few questions in, then you actually write it, that sort of thing. And even if they use the employee advocacy program to have some basic content ready for them, but then they jump in when there's an event or a product launch or they're making some partnership or something. I think if you have 50-50, that's actually a really good place to be. It can be a little bit tricky in terms of accessing, like who has access to the account, and do you have two-factor authentication, which you should have, but then it's trickier. We often treat the executive accounts almost like the branded accounts, so we have them in those same tools. So any time the support teams or communications teams are running the accounts, they're actually doing it through the tools, and the executives themselves just load it, which makes measurement a little bit trickier, but we can figure that out.
Casey, can I ask about the specifics of working with executives who would rather engage via LinkedIn rather than Twitter, or some of the differences between the platforms that might be helpful?
Yeah, so in my experience, LinkedIn has been the primary one that people want to use, and I think it makes the most sense for people to use. I think they already have a LinkedIn profile. I find that most executives use something. But it's a better place for them to start for the most part. I try to introduce Twitter, either for events like it came up like those times, but let them start where they're comfortable and give them some success in that area and some level of comfort, and then try to move on. I found that if I tried to bring, hey, let's do Twitter and LinkedIn and some other things at the same time, I don't want to say overwhelming because it's more very spot. These things is just beyond okay. Interesting time for. So in that case, maybe it would be that they do some of the LinkedIn stuff, and then if they do have a Twitter account, that's managed by someone else.
So our struggle is recruitment and finding qualified candidates. Between these two, like using employee advocacy or executive activation, have you used either of those for recruiting, and do you find that one works better than the other?
Yeah, so there's I haven't done it really specifically through executive activation. I mean, I think it helps, humanizing the brand and all those kinds of things. But I haven't used that specifically for recruitment. But for employee advocacy, I think is a great way to do recruitment. So whether it's showing that you're doing Habitat for Humanity, that you got suites at the Twins game or whatever it is, all those kinds of lifestyle things, I think is really good for recruiting. I've seen that as a big kind of new area in employee advocacy that a lot of people are using for. Yeah.
Any more questions for Casey?
So our former CEO, who retired a little over a year ago, was excellent at this. She drove it all herself. Blog, social, public engagements. She would approach us as a marketing team and ask us, what promos can she promote, what can she do to help. And so our audience felt like they knew her. When we would go to events, they would ask her, ask about her by name. Our new CEO is the exact opposite. And so we've got a little bit of a void that is starting to become noticeable.
Yeah, for sure.
And we've got some big events coming up soon for us, and I'm just kind of wondering what advice you have to maybe fill that void a little bit.
Yeah, I would say a couple of options is one, just do it for completely have the time to do it, which is not ideal. The other one is, does it have to be the CEO? If you have other, even not executives, but subject matter experts who are willing to go out and do it, maybe it's more of a chorus of people rather than the lead singer. But if they're not into it, it can be really challenging unless you're willing to kind of do it all for them. So, unfortunately, I don't have a answer for that, or a great answer for that. But I like the idea of finding other subject matter experts that can kind of raise that.
We have time for one more.
So have you worked with executives who actually want to start building their own personal brand, and how do you separate that tendency from pushing, working on your brand itself?
Yeah, and I think when I was talking about kind of finding that VP who wants to work their way up, that certainly happens. And I don't necessarily mean sometimes there's a tension there, and even with employee advocacy, it can be the same way when you're helping them build their personal brand. But ideally, those things can work really well together. And I think that there's risk, like when your CEO leaves, suddenly all this work you've done is now kind of out the door, and not just out the door, but went with that person. And unfortunately, that's just what you got to do. Or not unfortunately, but I think that that's the way that I position both executive activation and employee advocacy is really meant, well, the way I talk about it is to be a benefit to the people, like professional development, like almost like your vacation, and this is like something else that they provide. And part of that's, I help people who are going to use it for their own purposes, but that's aligned generally, hopefully.
All right. Cool. Thank you very much. Let's give one more round of applause to all of our presenters today. And a very happy birthday to George. By the way, I forgot to mention that earlier. So have a great rest of the day, and hopefully we'll see you next month.
Everybody, thanks for watching today. Like our page so you get these updates. It'll be shared on YouTube for sharing later on, and hope you enjoyed Social Media Breakfast and like Skelly video. Happy Thursday, everybody. See you in 1 month.